even though it's still a bit sunny outside, I thought I would commit to the autumn vibe, so I've gone with a dark green and a brown lip, which is unconventional for me, but I was going for like a conquer vibe. I don't know if I've pulled it off though. I didn't want to start this with an apology, so I won't. I'll say I would like to acknowledge the lack of videos recently. I say recently, in the last 2 weeks, which is fair enough. I've been busy. Like, the festival that I worked at happened, and then I went to Bournemouth for 2 days, 2 or 3 days, to see a concert with my friends that was booked ages ago and kept getting moved with COVID. So I've just been a bit non-stop, and then this weekend just gone, I just had to flake out, crashed with my mum. We just curled up and we watched Jake Gyllenhaal films, which was really fun. And now I'm sort of feeling a bit refreshed and like ready to like think about things again, which is nice. I enjoy my brain returning to me. It's been nice. So yeah, we're into October. It's my birthday month. The London Film Festival kicks off in a couple days. Halloween is soon, spooky season, like everything is aligning for me to thrive. So I'm hoping that the videos are going to come back, my enthusiasm will have returned from the war, my zest for life, where did it go? Hopefully it's coming back. Yeah, hopefully. Fingers crossed. So it only makes sense to kick off October with a what I read in September video. And as usual, I didn't read that much in September, but as I already said, it's been a busy month, so we're just gonna not apologise, we're just gonna dive into what I did manage to read. My first read of September was Kate in Waiting, and when I tell you that I thought I was gonna have the best reading month because I read this book in a day, on the train to work in the morning. It was the Victoria train, so it was only like, wait, is it 25 minutes? 25 minutes to half an hour is the Victoria train, and then I had about 2 stops on the tube. So it wasn't that large an amount of time, but I got through a big chunk of it, and then I read some, like, while I was waiting for work to start, and then on my train home, I read a big chunk, and by the time I'd gotten home, I was about halfway through, and I had a large chunk of the afternoon left, so I just thought, I can finish this today, and I did. And I cannot remember the last time I like finished a book in a day, and this book is not like that short. I mean, it's 387 pages, and I finished it in a day, and I thought, oh my god, my reading mojo, she's back, this is going to be such a good month for me. And then I came to the crushing realisation that finishing this in a day had nothing to do with my reading enthusiasm or speed, it was just Becky Albertalli's writing. So that's unfortunate for me. But anyway, let's get into the book. So Kate in Waiting is a YA novel from Becky Albertalli, who wrote the Simon verse. So Simon verse is the Homo sapiens agenda, The Upside of Unrequited, and Leah on the Offbeat. And I've read all 3 of those. So I shouldn't have been surprised that this worked so well for me, because obviously I've read 3 of her other books, so if it wasn't an author that was going to gel with me, like, why have I read 3 of her other books? And to be honest, when this came out, I wasn't thinking that I was going to go out and buy it. I thought, okay, like, I've read the Simon trilogy that are all linked, like, that sort of, you know, I can move on with my life. Like, I gave this 4 stars, and I don't know if maybe I'd read this on another day, in another month, if it would have got the same rating from me, but I think just the stars aligned for me to enjoy this. Like, it was my first read of the month, I had a lot of momentum reading it, finished it in a day, I had a lot of fun with it. It's based around theatre and, you know, friendship and love, and there's lots of like musical theatre and Hamilton references, and that's such a cheap way to get me, but it really gets me, and I really enjoyed it. And it's weird that I'm thinking of ways to like justify me giving this a really good rating, because like undeniably Becky Albertalli is a really good writer, but I honestly couldn't tell you what it was about this book that I love so much, other than just the way it was written and the atmosphere. There wasn't anything particularly groundbreaking in terms of plot. I mean, we follow 2 best friends, who I don't even remember their names, 2 best friends, Kate and Anderson, who both do acting, both do musical theatre at school, and then they both get a crush on this new guy. Oh, hello. They both get a crush on this new guy, Matt, and I think it's pretty clear, like, how the story is going to go. I read it in a day, but it wasn't because I was like page turning to like, oh my god, what happened? I think I knew what was happening, But I was just enjoying myself. I was enjoying the journey to get there. I love the writing style. I love the teen atmosphere. And the reason I put this on my September TBR is because I wanted that vibe of like school beginning again. Because I'm now in that period of my life where I've graduated from uni, so September no longer means the start of a new school year or the start of a new school term. So I was missing that sort of like start of something. And this was the perfect book to give me that. And it just found me at the right time. And like I said, I don't know if in another month I would have loved this as much as I loved it this month, but it just, like I said, found me at the right time. And the next book I finished in September was Pandoras Jar by Natalie Haynes, and I'm not sure that I have that much to say about it simply because I'm all talked out on it. This was our August pick for our Briar's book club that I run with my friend B, and this was our longest discussion I think we've ever done, and we still struggled to cover all the points we wanted to cover because there is just so much in this book. And talking of Briar's book club, I do want to say a quick shout out and thank you to anyone who's still keeping up with us. I know it has been a little bit difficult. We have found it really difficult to sort of coordinate our schedules, mine and B's, and do it at times where we can really deliver like a proper discussion and like give proper time to it, and life has just gotten a little bit busy over these last few months. So honestly, if you've managed to come to any of the discussions or you've gone and watched them after we've streamed, like a huge thank you from me, because a lot of work goes into it, and I know it might not seem like it because we're always like delaying and moving things around, and it might seem like we don't really care that much, but we do. We love doing it and we love the discussions, and the reason why they keep getting moved around is because we want to be able to give them the time and the care and the effort that they deserve. So if you've been keeping up with them, I really appreciate it. Big love to you, and we really hope to keep doing them. Just gotta bear with us with like organisation and the dates and everything. So that being said, obviously the Shirley Jackson book that we're reading for the month of September, the discussion hasn't happened for that yet, and it will be happening, I think, in the second week of October. So just keep your eyes peeled on our Twitter. As soon as we know, you will know. But yes, thank you so much for bearing with. We really appreciate it, and we hope you're enjoying it as much as we're enjoying doing the discussions. Anyway, after that big spiel, for those who don't know, Pandora's Jar, Women in the Greek Myths by Natalie Haynes is a non-fiction book about women in the Greek myths, and they're women that have been casually overlooked throughout history or overshadowed by their husbands, or just had their stories mistold, literally mistranslated by annoying people throughout history and just never gotten corrected. So Natalie Haynes really shines a spotlight on these multifaceted, what's the word? Sometimes villainous, sometimes victorious, sometimes maddening, sometimes evil women, but just women. They're women in all their complexity and callousness and chaos. Yeah. And obviously a lot of the women in these stories murdered their husbands, murdered their children, murdered people, so we don't want to have like a gaslight gatekeep girl boss moment. But there is a little bit of fun to be had in reading about these sort of, what's the word there? It's not badass because I don't want to glorify murder. What's the word? These women who were just the agents of their own story, right? And that does sound like a bit of a girl boss moment. Like, we don't want to endorse murder here, but like, take it with a pinch of salt. These are Greek myths. You're going to be coming into some really sketchy morals. But what I found really interesting reading the book and discussing with Bea in our live show was that often the more sanitized versions of the stories are more modern. So when you go back to the actual ancient texts, often they are more cruel and they are more gory and they are more scandalous than the versions that you see from like 1950 or 1960, which we would call modern. And you think obviously the more society advances, the more we cast off these sort of stereotypes, the more we advance, the more we evolve. And that just hasn't been the case, honestly. For example, one of my favourite women to read about in this collection was Medea, and I had like a geographical link with her because she's from, you know, what is now Georgia. That's where I was born, and she was married to Jason, and he cheated on her, and she took out her revenge on their kids, and she famously, very callously killed their children. And in the original Greek myth, in the original text, it's very cold and calculating the way she does it, and she's manipulative, and she is clever, and she's conniving, and she's almost cold about it, and then has these moments of doubt. And then in later adaptations of the text, in later sort of stage versions or retellings, Medea sort of descends into madness, and that's why she kills her children. And sure, you can just look at it as like another way of adapting it, but in that way it does take agency away from her. It sort of excuses her actions by saying, okay, well, he drove her to madness, therefore the children dying is Jason's fault. Whereas the original text was very much, no, she makes this choice to hurt him. And she's almost rewarded for it in the original text. She is the granddaughter of Helios, and she leaves the stage in his sun chariot. And usually that's only like a mode of transport like reserved for the gods or whatever. So it's just a really interesting thing to think about, like the way that these stories get warped by the times that they're then retold in, and how maybe as a society we're moving backwards rather than forwards in terms of like representation of women and queer people and disabled people and just people who aren't the norm. And that was something that was really interesting to think about. So if you want to hear about any more of the wonderful women in this book, there are so many interesting figures, and I don't have time here to talk about all of them, but we did talk about all of them in our live show. So that was Pandora, Jocasta, Helen, Medusa, the Amazons, Clytemnestra, Eurydice, Phaedra, Medea, and Penelope. And all of them get a little bit of mention and discussion in our live show. So if you're interested in that at all, 1, read the book, and 2, go and watch our live show, which will be linked somewhere in this video in the description. And the last book I read in September is Her Body and Other Parties, which is a short story anthology by Carmen Maria Machado. And it feels weird saying I read this in September because I feel like I've been reading it for ages. I think I started it maybe mid-July or August, and it's been something that I've been sort of percolating over for a few weeks, if not a few months. I think definitely 1 or 2 months I've been working my way through these stories. And it has been such a strange beast, honestly. It's been such an enjoyable reading experience, but there were so many moments where I was reading it being like, I'm too dumb for this, like, what is going on? So I remember getting this book, and the back says, a prize-winning, genre-bending collection of short stories that has already achieved cult status. Her Body and Other Parties is unique, unsettling, and totally original. Carmen Maria Machado demolishes the borders between magical realism and science fiction, comedy and horror, fantasy and fabulism. Bodies become inconsequential, humans become monstrous, and anger becomes erotic. A dark, shimmering slice into womanhood, Her Body and Other Parties is wicked and exquisite. And I remember reading that when I hauled it, being like, oh, I love that after having read the blurb, I still don't really know what the stories are about, or I don't know anything about the plot elements of the stories. And I'm not being funny, after having read the book cover to cover, I couldn't tell you much more than that in terms of like what the book is about. Obviously, like, it's an anthology, so they touch on different things. There isn't like a single thing that it's about. But it's a very sort of ephemeral book in the sense that it's quite difficult in some ways to grasp it, and that's kind of what I like about it. It's like it sort of shifts and moves as you read it, and what you think it's about, you know, when you think you've got it and you're like, okay, this story is about blah, it will change, and you'll be like, okay, no, I don't know what it's about now. Like, I'm just looking back at the titles and trying to jog my memory of what these stories contain, and it's difficult. But if I were to pick out like my top 3 out of the 8, I would say maybe Inventory, which is a story that takes place during a pandemic or some sort of world collapse, but I think it is a pandemic, it's a virus, and this was published in 2019, so I was like, ooh, bit uncomfortable, but it was a very well written story. And then 2 stories that appear next to each other in the collection are Real Women Have Bodies and then 8 Bites, which I think both deal a lot with the body and the female body and women's relationships to their bodies. So Real Women Have Bodies is about this society where sort of women have begun to like disappear, and they slowly become transparent. So it's obviously like magical realism, science fiction. It's sort of this weird liminal space where you're not sure, like it could be a dream, which I like that, and she writes very beautifully. And then 8 Bites is again about the body, but it's about sort of body modification and surgery and how you view your body and like an ideal body. And that potentially could be triggering for anyone who suffered with eating disorders, so just beware of that if you are going into this collection. But yeah, it's definitely one I would recommend, and something that I can see myself coming back to over the years. It's definitely one where, like I said, I did feel a bit too dumb for it in some sections, but I am very much looking forward to reading the thoughts and reviews of people much smarter than me, and they can tell me what it was that this collection does well. But it's just beautifully written, and it gives you a lot to think about, even if you don't know what exactly you're thinking about. I don't know if that made any sense at all, but you know what I mean? Like when you're reading something and you think, okay, this is bringing up a lot of feelings in me, let's unpack that, even if I'm not entirely sure what those feelings are yet. Does that make sense? I'll be very keen to know if you've read any of these stories or this collection, what your thoughts were, because I feel like since I've read it, I haven't brought it up to people because I'm so scared of like sounding dumb and like just not remembering things as well, because there's so much in here. Obviously there's 8 stories, but each story has such rich visual language that I'm just so aware that I must have missed a lot, or a lot went over my head, and that if I start talking about it to people, they will start talking about things that like I just don't know was there. Anyway, so please let me know if you've read this, what your thoughts were. I would be very keen to talk about it, because I feel like I've just been living in a little bit of a like bubble since I read this, just being scared to like investigate it more for fear of sounding stupid. But yes, I very much enjoyed, would very much recommend, will come back to it in the future. So those are the 3 books that I read in September, and honestly it felt like I read 4 because I spent a large section of September reading the new Sally Rooney, but it's just not in this wrap up because I finished it like on the 2nd day of October, so technically it'll be in my October wrap up, but I did spend a large chunk of September reading the new Sally Rooney because that came out at the beginning of September. So it feels like I've read more than what I've said, but that's because I was reading Sally Rooney, and I was letting that percolate for a while, and I think I'll do like a whole video review on that because interesting. It's interesting. Yeah, anyway, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you very soon with another one soon. Bye.